Hello, I'm Bill Hutchins, and welcome to a special edition of Global Kingston's The Year in Review.
And I'm Shauna Cunningham. Over the next 30 minutes, we'll be counting down the top stories making headlines across our region in 2022.
We have lots of ground to cover, from a Freedom Convoy protest that made a large pit stop in Kingston to the death of a beloved monarch.
We start our countdown of the top 5 stories in our region with the COVID scare. The new year started the same way that 2021 ended, with more lockdowns and vaccine mandates as ordered by Ontario's top doctor. But by the spring, the restrictions finally began to ease. Capacity limits were lifted, businesses were allowed to reopen, and by late March, Ontario's 2-year battle against COVID-19 marked a major milestone when the mask mandates were lifted for most public spaces, including schools. The COVID scare never went away, but the way public health and governments managed it started to change. Megan King covered that story.
In most settings here in Kingston's downtown, many are sticking to the status quo when it comes to masks.
Well, there's a couple stores we've been in, everyone's been wearing their masks and everyone's just complying with the store rules. So
everyone had them on in the dollar store when I was in there, so I started wondering maybe I got it wrong, because everywhere I went, everyone had them on. So the only place I haven't seen them on, people, is outside.
I just want to be careful with my health, knowing that I'm going home from school soon. So I'm okay wearing my mask. I've never had a problem with it. But if people choose to wear their masks or not wear their masks, it's not really my problem. And I kind of think that everyone should have their own opinions on it.
And some business owners like Justine Scala are choosing to continue requiring masks in store.
I've been very pleasantly surprised this morning that every person who has come in has had a mask on without needing to be asked. So that's very encouraging. I am somewhat concerned about negative pushback, but we'll just have to wait and see. And I plan to stand firm and keep my staff and my customers safe.
Scala says some of her staff have health conditions that make them vulnerable to COVID-19.
I really hope that everyone who comes in the store respects our feelings on the matter and is kind to our staff and to other customers.
Masks are also no longer required in schools, though they are still encouraged. The Director of Education welcomes loosened restrictions that will allow for opening schools to more than staff and students.
With these changes, there are other impacts as well, in the sense that we will be able to host spectators for events in schools, and this is an opportunity now for schools to start planning for more traditional kinds of graduation and end-of-year celebrations as well, as we approach the last few weeks of the school year this year.
An exciting time for some, a scary time for others. This provincial change means a choice for everyone, depending on their comfort level. I'm Megan King, Global News, Kingston.
There were many other newsworthy stories that happened in our region during the past year. 2022 also brought us challenges with other viruses and a war that impacted everyone. Here's a look. For the first time since the 1940s, part of Europe was plunged into war. Russia invaded Ukraine in late February, leading to condemnation around the world. The war elevated Ukraine's president into a Churchillian figure as he vowed to fight back the invaders, while local supporters spoke about Ukraine's unshakable resolve.
I don't think I ever thought I would live to see such a day.
With the war approaching 1 year, Ukrainian families have fled the carnage. Canada sent millions in aid, and Canadians opened their hearts to sponsor refugees, including many who ended up in Kingston.
Thank you for Kingston, for Canada, because it's really help for us.
Mass vaccinations against COVID-19 may have helped to lift pandemic restrictions, but it wasn't the only virus making the rounds. In the latter half of the year, the flu and RSV took hold, leading to swamped emergency rooms, made worse by a chronic shortage of over-the-counter children's cold and flu medicine. Parents and children encountered different challenges when CUPE education workers staged a 2-day strike in early November.
I have 3 jobs to get by.
And despite the threat of more labor disruptions, both sides eventually reached a contract. Bancroft was the scene of any parent's worst nightmare. A young boy died after being left alone in a car.
The community has, as I say, they're in still a bit of shock over it.
Instead of being dropped off at daycare, the 23-month-old toddler was forgotten in a hot car all day, while his mother went to work in a local school, in what the mayor called an accidental tragedy. A Kingston teen who pleaded guilty to terrorism charges was sentenced to 3 years. According to an agreed statement of facts, the unidentified teen unwittingly communicated online with an FBI undercover agent that he believed to be a lone wolf terrorist in Virginia and sent him instructions on how to build a pressure cooker bomb and plant it in a public place to kill, quote, enemies of Allah. Local residents felt the pinch of rising inflation through the year. Everything from groceries to gas went up, and so did interest rates. This while Kingston tried to get a handle on its homeless situation. The city temporarily suspended a bylaw to prevent evictions from homeless encampments in public places, but the gesture led to complaints as tents sprang up in some popular parks before council reinstated the no camping rules a month later and adopted a different approach.
So we did approve new funding for new shelter beds, new funding for up to 10 additional sleeping cabins.
Prime Minister Trudeau came to town in mid-July to take part in a $1.5 billion announcement.
We've reached a deal with Umicore to build a new battery facility in Loyalist Township.
Belgian-based Umicore will provide battery materials for electric vehicles. 2022 brought not one but 2 elections. In June, voters returned Doug Ford with a majority government while electing PC candidates in our region. Local MPPs Todd Smith and Steve Clark were re-elected. The big exception was in Kingston and the Islands.
We have a duty to hold Doug Ford's government to account.
Ted Hsu completed his political comeback, securing this riding for the Liberals, even as his party's leader resigned. In October, it was time to choose mayors, councillors, and school boards. Kingston Mayor Brian Patterson coasted to a third-term victory.
And some big challenges, but I'm grateful to have that vote of confidence from the community.
The municipal election produced some upsets, notably in Belleville. Incumbent Mayor Mitch Panchuk was defeated by former MP Neil Ellis, who returned to his old stomping grounds.
Just fantastic, overwhelmed with joy.
The summer brought severe weather across the region. A ferocious windstorm with gusts to 150 kilometers an hour carved a wide path of destruction in May.
It's like a Mad Max movie.
It looked like Armageddon in an East End Belleville neighborhood following a fire that rained styrofoam everywhere, prompting a brief evacuation and a messy cleanup. And CKWS will never be the same, as longtime sportscaster Doug Jeffries called it a career. 46 years in broadcasting, almost half of it on TV. June 15th was declared Doug Jeffries Day in the city, while local emergency crews stopped traffic outside the studios to honor Doug.
Man, how many people can say they've lived their dream, and it's all because of you guys. It's all been a labor of love, folks.
We all hope he gets that elusive hole-in-one in retirement.
Stay with us as we continue our countdown of the top stories in our year in review. Her reign will likely never be matched, as the Commonwealth mourned the death of the Queen. Welcome back as we continue our countdown of the top stories making headlines in our region in 2022.
Tragedy struck Royal Military College this past year. 4 officer cadets lost their lives when their vehicle plunged into the water of Lake Ontario in late April.
It may be some time before we know what happened. Mike Postovit covered the tragedy.
It looks like business as usual at Kingston's Royal Military College. No flags at half-staff, nothing on the surface that would indicate any kind of a disruption in routine. But there is little doubt people are grieving after 4 fourth-year officer cadets lost their lives here. Jack Hogarth, Andre Honchu, Broden Murphy, and Andre Salick, all on the verge of graduation. The vehicle they were in was later pulled from the frigid water that surrounds the military school on 3 sides.
Details of the incident will not be provided until the investigation is complete.
And that
Welcome back. As we continue our countdown of the top stories making headlines in our region in 2022.
Tragedy struck Royal Military College this past year. 4 officer cadets lost their lives when their vehicle plunged into the water of Lake Ontario in late April.
It may be some time before we know what happened. Mike Postovit covered the tragedy.
It looks like business as usual at Kingston's Royal Military College. No flags at half-staff, nothing on the surface that would indicate any kind of disruption in routine. But there is little doubt people are grieving after 4 fourth-year officer cadets lost their lives here. Jack Hogarth, Andre Honchu, Broden Murphy, and Andre Salick, all on the verge of graduation. The vehicle they were in was later pulled from the frigid water that surrounds the military school on 3 sides.
Details of the incident will not be provided until the investigation is complete.
And that, according to lawyer Rory Fowler, could take an extended period of time. First, the military police investigation has to be completed, and then a board of inquiry will be struck.
The military police investigation will take several weeks, or could potentially take several weeks, and the board of inquiry typically will take several months because they are very precise and methodical about that, particularly where there's a great deal of scrutiny.
My condolences and sympathies certainly go to the family and friends for sure.
Someone who can relate to those families waiting for answers is Ron Grizel. The body of his son, Officer Cadet Joe Grizel, was found in the water near LaSalle Causeway back in 2003. A similar military veil of secrecy descended then, too.
Unfortunately, these things certainly take time, and I'm just hoping that the families will certainly get some transparency through this whole process and be given the information that they need to get through it all.
Grizel says he's still waiting for some of his answers, and he strongly disagrees with some of the findings in his son's case. He hopes that the investigation into Friday's incident will bring better closure for the cadets' families and for a university community left grieving in silence.
We have about 1,200 students on campus, and so to lose 4 all at once.
Mike Postovit, Global News, Kingston.
The Commonwealth was plunged into mourning in September after a 7-decade reign that will likely never be matched. Queen Elizabeth II passed away.
From politicians to commoners, the sadness was felt across the world where the Queen served as head of state. And as King Charles assumed the throne, people reflected on the Queen's lifelong duty and lasting legacy. Ryan Pettigrew covered some of the local reaction.
Many people across the world are shocked following the death of Queen Elizabeth II, who reigned for a staggering 70 years and into her 90s up until her death on Thursday. Mixed feelings of shock and sadness at the passing of someone who has been as much a part of their lives as their parents. Kingston Mayor Brian Patterson spoke about the Queen's legacy.
For the vast majority of us here in this community, she's the only monarch that we've ever known. And certainly I hold real personal admiration for the Queen, just the way that she leads.
On a balmy summer afternoon in downtown Kingston, the Queen was top of mind for some people who were out walking the streets. Alan Barstow, who hails from Yorkshire, England, said he was absolutely shattered by the news.
I just feel like a part of my heritage, my life has been taken away because I remember I was 13 when the Queen became the Queen.
Barstow says he admired the Queen greatly and that he followed the Queen's story for years.
She said, "Senator Siegel, it's great to meet you. I really appreciate that speech you made in your Senate 3 weeks ago." I'm thinking to myself, I don't remember what speech I made 3 weeks ago in the Canadian Senate. So that just said to me, she's really well briefed. She is very bright. She has a wonderful memory for all the people she has met.
She acted for all those 70 years as the adult in the room, a quality person. So if we had a say, it would be that her pictures would remain. King Charles might be added, but hers should remain because of her history.
I think they should still hang, some of them, and then of course some will be changed to King Charles when that's ready to do. But At the moment, yes, we're going to change everything, and I really am missing the Queen.
Ryan Pettigrew, Global News, Kingston.
Throughout the year, we covered stories that didn't fall into any particular category. In many cases, these are stories that made us smile. Here's a sample. The new year was just a few hours old when Janice Tremblay welcomed a bundle of joy.
He was my big New Year's surprise and my New Year's resolution.
At 5 pounds, 7 ounces, Ethan Robert Tremblay was Kingston's first baby of the year. These brave souls decided to take the polar plunge in the Bay of Quinte. Police, firefighters, and paramedics all joined in the icy dip. The cause was worth the chill, raising money for the Special Olympics.
That water was incredibly cold. What a way to wake you up, but what a great way to raise money.
It would cost you a pretty penny to be the king of this castle. Yes, Kingston's only castle hit the market in April. The mid-19th century property at 14 Sydenham Street was listed for $2.8 million.
Of City Park, you're right beside the county courthouse. You walk to everything that we can enjoy downtown.
The castle boasts 3,500 square feet with 4 fireplaces, original hardwood floors, high ceilings, and even a lookout tower. This guy could probably afford a castle and then some. Bernard Boucher of Belleville won $11 million playing Lotto 649. Boucher planned to share the winnings with his children and grandchildren and find ways to give back to the community. Our viewers got to meet Ingrid, a young cat with mobility issues that we profiled more than once in her search for a forever home. Ingrid, in the care of the Lennox and Addington SPCA, captured hearts, including a Kingston woman who adopted her.
She called us and she said, I saw her on the news last night and I just had to call. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I had to call and see if Ingrid was still there.
Everybody, make some noise. Here we go.
From cats to pint-sized pups, the Chihuahua races returned from the pandemic restrictions, racing for a cause, raising money for the charity Sheba's Haven Dog Rescue. In the races, Hank was crowned the top little dog. A tugboat that tugs at the heartstrings of children steamed into town. Theodore 2 wowed crowds during a brief stop in Kingston, allowing onboard tours as the East Coast tug made its way to a new port in Hamilton.
Welcome to the Santa Claus Parade!
Kingston's nighttime Santa Parade returned to full strength in November for the first time since the pandemic. Thousands lined the parade route as dozens of floats and bands came together for 2 miles of smiles down Princess Street. Batman, Spider-Man, and other superheroes dropped by the pediatric ward at Kingston General Hospital to clean some windows, giving sick children, their families, and hospital staff something to marvel at.
Just tons of smiles on the patients' faces.
It was awesome to see the kids again. It's been a tough couple years.
And while it was a super sight from the outside at this annual event, these pictures from the inside speak 1,000 words of joy.
Stay with us as we reveal the top stories of 2022. A freedom convoy rumbled through this region on its way to a showdown with the federal government.
Welcome back to our Global Kingston year-end special report. We are counting down the top stories in southeastern Ontario during the past year, plus others of notable mention.
It was called the Freedom Convoy, but before protesters and their big rigs occupied downtown Ottawa for 3 weeks last winter, prompting the feds to impose the Emergencies Act, the convoy brought its message to Kingston. Darren Davis has more.
The transport convoy that left British Columbia several days ago started arriving in Kingston a little before 5 p.m. Thursday night. Supporters gathered on sidewalks, snowbanks, the Gardiners Road overpass, and the 401 exit ramp. The protest convoy started in part when the federal government implemented a mandatory vaccination policy for transport drivers that drive into the United States. Transport driver Steve Chabot says he is vaccinated and crosses the border regularly.
I cross every day. So, all this affects me. I did my part. I went and got my shot so I could continue to work like I was asked to do and like a lot of us have done. And, we just keep finding ourselves with more and more restrictions and more problems. I'm a pretty laid-back guy, pretty peaceful guy, and, I'm tired of all this stuff. This is why I'm out here. I'm trying to show my support and try and make a difference for myself and my children.
We've got people in this convoy who are talking about overthrowing the government. You've got people in this convoy who are just simply not happy with the idea of having to get a vaccine. You've got people in this convoy who are actively engaged in white supremacism. You've got an absolute mixed bag of people. And I think from a political perspective, it's extremely dangerous for politicians to be just lending their support holus bolus to something that clearly has no clear focus.
This may not be the last we'll be seeing of this protest in Kingston. It is expected that other organized convoys from other regions, including from across the border, could be rolling into Kingston en route to Ottawa for a mass protest planned for Saturday. Darren Davis, Global News, Kingston.
Now it's time for our top story of the year, and it didn't happen all that long ago. After 50 years of talking, 10 years of studies, 3 years of construction, and $180 million later, Kingston's long-awaited third bridge finally opened to the public.
There was a ribbon cutting and a bridge naming ceremony in mid-December to open the biggest infrastructure project in the city's history. Aaron Strickland has our top story of 2022.
In the making. Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
With that, Kingston's long-awaited third bridge crossing was officially opened Tuesday afternoon. The $180 million project to span the Cataraqui River will now serve as a major link with the city's east end, giving drivers another option to get across town instead of just using the LaSalle Causeway Highway 401.
This was the largest infrastructure project undertaken in Kingston, period.
While the idea for a third crossing was first sparked back in 1967, it took until just 3 years ago to start construction. And despite a worldwide pandemic and labor strikes, the project was delivered on time and on budget, officially named Waubin Crossing.
Building a bridge this had a lot of challenges, and not just the regular challenges. And then we have a global pandemic on our hands. So someone mentioned it, but I can tell you, I didn't think the project would continue for a while. And myself and Mark Van Buren and Phil and the project team would talk a lot, but there was nobody that didn't want to keep going.
The federal government, the province, and the city of Kingston each contributed $60 million to the project, with each level of government represented at the opening ceremony. Opening speeches were held at the Kingston East Community Center before spectators were shuttled over to the eastern landing of the Waubin Crossing for a ribbon-cutting ceremony.
On behalf of His Worship, Mayor Brian Patterson, Council in the City of Kingston, and with the cutting of this ribbon, we will declare the Waubin Crossing officially open. Here ends this proclamation!
Following the ribbon-cutting ceremony, those who won the city's online auction to be the first to cross the 1.2-kilometer bridge began their journey. The first pedestrian, a group of 3 scooter riders, and a motor coach carrying about 50 people.
This is a moment to savor. This is a moment that we have all earned by working together. And you know what? In the days and the months and the years ahead, whatever your plans are, whether it's in your car, whether it's on your bike, or whether it's just a walk across the bridge, I look forward to seeing each and every one of you on our new Waubin Crossing.
Charting a new alternative route for the city's future. Aaron Strickland, Global News, Kingston.
And that's our look at some of the people, places, and events making headlines across our region in 2022.
We wish you a safe and happy new year. Thanks for watching this Global Kingston News Special.
Hair and makeup by Luce Hair Studio with 3 locations, downtown, Kingston East, and Kingston West. Vehicle detailing by the Auto Salon Kingston. Accommodations provided by Comfort Suites, Kingston Central.